Thank you very much, everybody, for joining today. So hopefully you can see my screen. My name's Steve Gemma. I'm head of sales here at Sicon. For those, hopefully you've all heard of us, but if not, we are an ISV, as Sage calls us now, an independent software vendor, only developed for Sage 200. And just bringing this on the screen, we've got probably the largest portfolio in the ISV community of add-ons. So if you visit our website, you can see all of these are available for Sage 200. Now, today's session, we're actually going to focus on the WAP platform, which is our web portal. So firstly, what is WAP? Now, the vast majority of what we do is written into the Sage database, so it's fully integrated with Sage, and you wouldn't necessarily know where Sage stops and Sicon starts. WAP is slightly different in that it's accessed externally via a web browser. At a database level is pushing and pulling data as it needs to. So the whole idea with this is it should be reducing admin. It also enables you to put processes in place to control, for example, expenditure, which we'll talk about for requisitions, alongside ensuring that your employees are able to access information, but not having to have a Sage 200 license. So WAP is modular, and these are the variety of modules. Now, I'm not going to have time to go through all of these today, but certainly we'll look to brush on them. The top three are the most popular. So purchase requisitions, which we'll start with today. So the whole idea there is pre-PO. So I want to buy a laptop, for example. That goes through an approval process, until which time it's been fully approved, it then creates a purchase order in Sage, and Sage is providing WAP then with a PO number. Tying quite nicely into that, then you've got the invoice approvals module that can be added, whereby either just an ad hoc invoice or an invoice that's matched to that PO can go back out to WAP to be approved. Expenses, my personal favourite. It's not too sad to have a personal favourite module. Not that I enjoy doing expenses, I still dislike doing admin. I'm a typical salesperson like that. But again, making life easier rather than have to be in the office. Timesheets, pretty self-explanatory, but being able to then record time, tying nicely into the Sicon project solution, so recording time then against projects, but again, approving that before it's posted through. Holidays complements that, so being able to control your holiday entitlement. I put a request in, being able to see my colleagues off, so what's the likelihood of me having that holiday approved, and once approved, sending out calendar invites to go into my Outlook calendar. But if you've got the timesheets module, then updating my timesheet with those holiday dates. Sales orders, probably the least popular of the modules, which is slightly surprising because a very powerful utility. So giving your sales team visibility of stock items, if that's the industry you're in. So you sat with a customer, live stock information, your prices, but then an approval. So not trying to approve all of them because you don't want to, why would you approve a sale? But of course, approving the margin. So any of those orders that fall below that margin being approved before it creates the sales order in the system, but providing them information of what's been dispatched as well. And then finally, something that's close to my heart, mini HR solution, because you've got your employees in there having that information. So without further ado, let's jump in and we'll do a live demonstration. So what you can see on screen is the WAP platform. Now, two ways of deploying it, either inside of your network or outside. What I mean by that is, if it's inside, I need a VPN connection or dial in via or be in the office. Alternatively, the way we use it, a lot of our clients do, poke a little hole in the firewall, sit it behind an SSL certificate. It's about as technical as I get. Essentially, it becomes a HTTP address, and anywhere you've got an internet connection and a valid login details, then you can access this. I use it on my MacBook, my iPad in Safari and Chrome, works in Microsoft Edge. And as you can see on the screen, there's also then, providing it's external facing, a WAP app, which is Android and iOS. So the whole idea behind this, as I said earlier, is that devolvement of responsibility to your end users to handle tasks, but in a controlled way. Now, the WAP platform's been out for many years, but it has been exaggerated. With more people now working remotely, it's become a very an even more popular module with customers looking to give remote access to certain functions to their employees. So let's, oh, no, not click on there. Let's go back to my web browser, and I'm going to log in. Now, WAP is modular. As I mentioned, you purchase only the modules that are relevant. First time a user logs in, they will be asked to change their password. Now, I'm logged in as the admin. I don't have to be a Sage 200 user, and that's the beauty of this, is again, being able to control this outside, but you're not having to rekey the information. Things such as out of office functionality. So as an approver, if I'm going to be away on holiday or out of the business, picking an alternate user that's been set for me, turning on my out of office, items then being redirected to that approver. Upon my return, anything that's not been approved, moving back into my queue. Being able to use the system admin, so you're in total control, it's installed in your Sage environment, so you've got access to the back end. So to turn on the out of office if they've forgotten via the system settings. There's delegate functionality, so assigning that to certain users and giving them a list of other WAP users whom they can assume control of without having a password. Essentially, I've now selected Corey, I'm logged in as Corey, and I could submit an expense or I could approve a requisition, for example, on Corey's behalf, but I can't stitch him up. It will say Steve Gemma has approved on behalf of Corey. So I'm actually going to log out for the moment. I'm going to log in as a user called Sandra. So Sandra doesn't have access to Sage. She is an employee who's going to raise a requisition. And if we go to the menu on the left-hand side, we can see the options that Sandra's been provided to. Any of the modules that you haven't purchased won't be in the list. Likewise, any of the modules that you do not give functionality to, again, won't appear. So Sandra comes in, new requisition, and essentially the functionality is going to mirror Sage's purchase order processing. But most importantly, this list of suppliers is coming from our live Sage 200 company and this company, which is the one I'm using today. So WAP will wrap around multi-company environments. There's no extra cost for that. The only additional cost would be the users and time to implement that. If we were to add a new supplier in Sage, when I log in, that supplier will be available in the list. So if I pick Chrome Decor today, the delivery and invoicing details, contact details have all been pulled through from Sage. I've got a multitude of options for delivery addresses, things such as being able to ship it to a customer address. If you've got the Sicon projects, then being able to ship that to a project address. If you haven't got projects, simply switch it off. That's not there as an option. So what can we add onto the system? So stock items. So for those of you who are using stock, you can also set up templates for recurring orders. It just means that as I start to type, and I don't need to know the stock code, so I've just typed in the letters PRO, and it's doing a smart search across the 3 columns there. I can see our free stock, but as I pick an item, it's then going to pull through the warehouse locations, your buying prices, all those details, the nominal that you've set up in Sage. If you're not using stock, not a problem at all. You can turn that option off. It's a global option, so it would just remove it from all users. And instead, as I'm going to do today, we can add a free text line. So as I mentioned, we'll buy my good old laptop, but this time we'll do a nice one. And we'll buy one of those at £750 is my request. I am going to confirm a goods received. I'll come back to that a little bit later. Because I've got Sicon projects enabled, at this stage, as I start to type in, I can pick the appropriate project. Obviously, if you haven't, then that's going to be switched off. Most importantly, though, is nominal. So for free text, they have to pick a nominal, but to make life easy for your end users, most customers will give them a truncated list. So that means nothing to most, but a description does. So I'm going to say that's material purchases. Click on save, and I can continue to add my lines. I can add comment lines and charge lines as well, as you see fit. I can flag it as urgent, so we can control the frequency of the notifications on a user-by-user basis. What this will do is this will highlight that it's urgent and can override that. So it just is obviously not a valid reason, but I always put this in tongue-in-cheek because we obviously can't control somebody flagging that, but it does have an important feature. Likewise, we've got justification, so some notes, need for new project, and attachments. So perhaps I've got some quotes, so being able to drag and attach those quotes. Oops, let's try that again. See if this will let me drag and drop this time. There you go, onto the top there, and being able to drag the attachments. Now, if I'm on an iPad, If I click on here at the Sage, you want to go to the files, especially with the latest iOS versions. So there's my order. There's more to it for the moment, but I'm going to just save that. You can print and email out quote requests to them. Save only sits as a draft, save and submit. And this is really the power of WAP, in my personal opinion, is the flexibility of the approval routes. So for requisitions, these can be based on supplier. So everything for supplier A goes to person A, everything for supplier B goes to person B. That can be multi-level in terms of multi-level approvers. We can send it out based on value. You can do it by project if you've got Sicon projects. You can, most customers will do it based on the nominal. So perhaps grouping the cost center. Can be multi-level. You can give approval limits to users. You can even flag, so if it's over budget, then it will go to the board of directors, and so long as 2 of them approve it, it will flow through. And you've got different approval route options for each of the modules. The final requisition one, just to touch on, is what we call a project requisition. So this is where you may have perhaps a procurement team. So I want to buy a laptop. I don't really care where you buy it from. I just need a laptop. Here's the specification. So I can add the details in, the description, perhaps it's for, it would obviously be for a project. I can leave the price blank and I can leave the supplier blank. I submit it, you build an approval route for project requisitions that would go through to the procurement person. They would pick the supplier, negotiate the price, submit it, splits it out then to the requisitions, goes to the requisition approval routes before you get your POs. So what's actually happened is Corey, who's my main approver, has received an email. You can't approve it from the email because of security, but also there's a lot of information to source. But he clicks and logs in, and he can approve it from the WAP app, or as he comes in, there's our requisitions. We can see it's from Sandra, and that's the one I've just put on. It's urgent. There's our notes, there's an attachment, and there's the line items, because it is wholly possible for a single requisition to go out to multiple users. There's the line details. In terms of the attachment, I can click and view that. There's the attachment, so quote, for example. Budgets, so we can have nominal budgets, project budgets if necessary. We haven't got one set for this one, but giving the approver a real-time view of the month, the annual. There's a year-to-date option as well. What we've actually spent, what's sat in deferred, it's because I've not opened up my future accounting periods yet. The value of any purchase orders that are on the system that have yet to be completed. And this I always think is important, is the WAP requisitions that have yet to be approved, giving us a real-time view of that, as well as a report to be able to drill down and look at the transactions. Corey has a few options. Option number 1 is he can approve or reject individual lines, or he can approve all. If you reject, you have to give a reason why it would go back. I'm just going to approve all today for the system, and I'm going to actually log out now as Corey. His work's done. Again, the key bit here is they don't have to be in the office. Those bits of paper, they don't have to flow between them. We're doing this remotely, and as you'll see in just a moment, we're not going to have to rekey. So I log back in as Sandra. Down the bottom here, in terms of the dashboard, if I go to completed, we can see that's red because it was urgent, and that the requisition's now been fully authorised by Corey. Of course, if it was multi-level, then based on the logic, Sandra would be notified to let her know who's now going to approve it. If we click on the link, it takes us straight through, and you can hopefully see there 3707. It's only once it's fully approved will it create the purchase order in Sage. If we have a quick look at Sage and we refresh this, there's my purchase order. And if I view this, we haven't had to rekey anything. We've put controls in place. It's all flown through. There's our nice laptop. If we come at the top, we can see it's come from WAP, on which WAP user. Now at this stage, you could send the PO out from inside of Sage. Alternatively, we do then invoke some stationery in the system whereby you can put your logo on there. There's a layout, a number of different layouts. Sandra can email this. So again, it's great if you're doing it on your iPad, you get the email, log into it, could be in a coffee shop, although obviously not sure the viability of that at the moment, but you get the idea, and I can send that out as a PDF attachment. Now, for some customers, it's not really relevant, so you can switch it off, but in my system, I've got 3-way matching. So we've enabled Sandra to be able to goods receive. So the laptop arrives, and because I've got my free text set up as goods received, again, it's great for call off orders, but if it was stock, would be the same. But because it's in Sage, it's a Sage PO. If you do the goods receipt in Sage, not a problem at all. We're reading the same information. So as I receive this, there's the details on there. I have to enter my document number. I can receive all. I could part receive. We've also got an option here that you can switch on called a final receipt. So in this example, obviously there's one bit. If I received half a laptop, I think you can complain about that, but imagine I received half of my laptop and I'm not going to receive the rest. I could flag it as a final receipt, and essentially it's going to adjust the quantities both on the PO in Sage and in WAP. I'm just going to receive all, save that. Again, what we're going to see in a moment, that's now updating Sage. Now, just whilst I'm in here, I will come back around to the invoice approval shortly, and I'm just going to touch on expenses. So from an expenses perspective, I've worked in organisations where I've been using this now for 6.5 years. I've been with Sicon. Previous to that, it was a spreadsheet which would take forever to fill in. You put it in the internal mail, it would get sent back as it's unapproved, and it was horrible. But I always forgot that the finance department then would have to be keying in properly, sometimes in excess of 500 expense claims manually into a system. So what this again is going to do is it's going to enable me to submit my expenses remotely, but with controls in place, as well as then being able to have that approved, but we're not going to have to rekey it. And we'll see that process in a moment. So first things first, Sandra is linked to a purchase ledger account in Sage. So once fully approved, it will post a purchase invoice for those against Sandra's account. So then you can obviously pay that, produce remittance advice. In terms of the expenses, we add two options. First one is mileage. So we can have a declaration to make sure, you know, that things I've got the correct insurance, I've checked that the car's suitable, not drink driving, anything like that. So you can fill that in yourself. We can handle different vehicle types. So those that are using the HMRC engine size, or it could be private mileage as well, whereby we're going to track the mileage in the current tax year. In that scenario, should it hit 10,000 miles, it will automatically move to the lower rate. With regards to the engine size, should the HMRC change those rates, then a user with admin privileges can log in the back, put in effective from, change those values. As an end user, I really don't have to worry about that. I just keep putting my expenses on and it's going to use the logic. So as I click on new line, I've got the date of my travel. So I'll just say I went somewhere on Tuesday. Is there a receipt, number of passengers? Again, I can pick my project. So I will just link that to the test project. I'm going to say it's expenses. My nominal is already set up, so I don't have to worry about that, although I could change that if it changes depending on the travel type. And then we have Google Map integration. So I'm going to say, and you can set up favorites, but I'm going to say I started at Sicon. So that's us. So because it's Google, it's doing a smart. So if I search for Smith Cooper, there's the office in King Street. Yes, it was a return journey. No, I don't need to take off my regular commute. And if I calculate the distance, it goes off to Google Maps, works out the quickest route, not necessarily the shortest, and I can then simply click on accept. Now you will get some feedback, which is, well, I didn't do that route or I had to divert. Not a problem. You could not use Google Maps and I can just enter it, or there's an option I haven't got switched on where it's called amend. I can't change that figure, but I can put and overwrite the figure in a cell below. So it just means that you're tracking and saying, okay, we know the mileage should have been this. They actually are claiming for this mileage, and they'll put the description in here of what it is they're claiming. So meeting with Chris and the team. I'm going to save that, and I could keep adding my mileage in there. For expense items, you set them up in the background of the system. Again, we'll say I stayed over in a hotel as the option I've got. It could have been subsistence, for example. Is there a receipt attached? Yes, there is. So the currency and the amount that I'm claiming, so I'm going to claim £85. In terms of different currencies, it's going to pull through the exchange rate that you've got set up in Sage, but I could overwrite that. The VAT, I can change it. There's a whole host of settings. Again, let me just pick my project here. Oh, let's do that again. There we go. I'm going to say what it is. So we'll just say an expense. I'll enter my reasons. So overnight stay. Any extras? So did I have alcohol? Did I travel first class? Attachments, so being able to go electronic with your receipts. So again, being able to drag and drop that receipt onto here. On the WAP app, you can take a photograph and attach it. If I'm doing it on my iPad, then I can either use the camera or I can attach a previously taken photo. As I save and I keep going, obviously there's my expense claim. I can print an expense voucher if I want to, but save and submit, and that's going to go out for approval again. Just moving down the list, timesheets. If I enter my current timesheet, you can see here Sandra's already started to add some time in as we go, but we can start to build up our timesheet. This one's linked to because I've got projects on, so I can say what project I worked with, what cost rate, so did I do overtime, and then we can say, okay, on Tuesday. Now I've got start and end times. It can be hours and minutes, hours and decimals. Again, it's entirely up to you, but I can say, yeah, I did 9 till 5. I can update that, keep going, or I can say, no, that's what I want to add, and I can now submit my timesheet. That's going to go out for approval as well. And then finally, I'm just going to come into holidays, and I can create a new holiday request. I can see what's left. Oh, there we go. I haven't rolled it forward, but I would be able to see my entitlement. I'll be able to see a calendar of my colleagues' requests. I can add that request in. It will tell me if there's any conflicts. We don't typically stop you from still submitting it because there'll always be extenuating circumstances, but normally this will be a requesting user, so my line manager can make that decision. So that's Sandra done with all of her bits. So let's just go back through. So first things first, Corey's received his email. So we've got some expenses to approve. So it's the same principle. There's different approval routes, but there's the one that I put on just a moment ago. So as we expand it, we can see the journey. So meeting with Chris, there's my overnight stay. And if I click on here, I can see a copy of the receipt. I can see the details. If I go across to here, what VAT, etc., the payment type. There is also an option for a company credit card fee that you can take your CSV and import it, and it will create an expense claim from the credit card statement. So again, all these other wonderful things. I'm just going to come through and I'm going to approve that. Final one to approve will be timesheets. So if we just approve the timesheet here, again, I can see my team's timesheets. As I scan down, I can see what was already approved and the line that we want to approve. Then I can approve or reject. So hopefully what you're seeing here is, obviously I'm whipping through this quite quickly, but we're not having to rekey anything. The system's giving the functionality to control those approval routes, and control, I think, is always a key bit, giving visibility to the business, but enabling us to reduce that admin and utilize technology. So the last thing that I want to do is just come back into Sage itself, and we're going to touch on invoice approvals. So first things first, there's my purchase order, and I'm going to record my purchase invoice against this. So first things we can see, because I've got three-way matching, the details here, and at the bottom it tells us that it's been received and which WAP user. Now with this on, I need to enter the reference to check that we've not already posted an invoice. I need to enter the values. Now, if the values don't match, we've added some functionality which will create a variance line on there as well. So as it comes out to WAP, you can then pick a nominal code or change the nominal code for that variance. So as I post it, you should recognize in a moment Sage's standard purchase invoice screen, which is the same if you were putting it ad hoc. Now, there are a couple of settings. So of course, if all of this matches, why do we need to reapprove the invoice? So yeah, WAP can be configured so that it won't go back out to WAP. Or sorry, essentially it goes out to WAP, but WAP will just say, yes, it's fully approved. There's also a tolerance, so long as it's inside 2% or £3, the system's happy. You can attachments there using Dracer's document capture or the Sicon documents as well. We also pull down with WAP in the narrative. So a bit of feedback we have is it's great from a PO, but all you see is that those elements there on the left will actually give you the description as well. So I'm just going to save that, and that's going to go out to WAP for somebody to approve. That'll be the final bit for me. Sandra's expenses, I mentioned that earlier. So if we just come into our purchase ledger, and we go into the suppliers list, and we look at Sandra Marquez's expenses and just look at the transaction inquiry. That's been fully approved. Now, normally you put finance as the final approver because you want to check the VAT and make sure you're happy. Once it's fully approved, what we can do then is we can see the invoice, we can see the nominal details, and as I said earlier, we also then pull down the narrative, the description from the expense lines. That's ready now to be paid. So very quickly, we come back into WAP. Corey needs to approve that invoice. So there's 71 that he needs to approve. He's a bit behind. There are reports which will tell you what still needs to be approved. Now let me just, I think it was Chrome, wasn't it? Is it Chrome? Oh, no, it's Chrome Decor. So I believe, where is it? It's one of these anyway. It might have been that one there. It might have been Christian Cullen. It was actually, I think. Well, maybe not. But you get the idea. You'll see the lines, and of course you can approve the invoice, and you would see the attachments. One final feature we've added in is wanting to be able to approve the suggested payments. And there are some caveats to this, which of course we can speak to you about. But it does mean that we can send the suggested payments, so build an approval route. So you generate that in Sage as you ordinarily would. That comes out for somebody to sign it off. They can expand, view the details, choose what they will or won't pay this time round. But all the while back in Sage, if I want to pay that through this process, I pick BGT. I click on OK, it's saying you can't. So we've put controls in there. There is so much more that I could show you, obviously conscious of time and sticking to my half-hour allotted slot today. But essentially, WAP, the idea behind it, as you can see there, is that development of responsibility. There is the app as well, which a lot of people are using, so being able to approve or submit your expenses on the app, and there's utilities in there. But that remote aspect, and that's very much what Chris and Smith Cooper and ourselves wanted to get across today. So, Chris, unless there's any,
Yeah, there is. Yeah, there is.
Oh, there is. Okay.
It's not too bad. So in Purchase Recs, I know that you can purchase rec stock items and suppliers that don't exist in Sage. Is it possible, if when that's approved, to auto create those stock items and suppliers in Sage?
No, but there is an option. In fact, if I just edit away from that and I just log in as my admin user, so it won't automatically create them, but there is an option that you can turn on to allow users to request new suppliers or new stock items.
Right, okay, cool. Yeah,
if you do that, you go an approval route, and again, it gives you controls that way.
Yeah, perfect. WAP app, is it available on Android and Apple?
Yes, both platforms. At the moment, Apple is on the iOS store, the App Store. Android is currently on the Microsoft Store, but we are working to get that on Google Play.
Yeah, cool. Do you need a Google account for the Google Maps feature? I think you guys have bought the license for that your side, haven't you, Steve?
No, so the way Google changed, we used to, but Google changed the rules a couple of years ago. So yes, you will need to set up a Google API account. And again, we'll tell you what API calls you need to turn on. They will ask for your credit card, and certainly, unless it's changed, to the best of my knowledge, they give you $200 or $300 worth of credit. I can never remember which one it is. Essentially, it's about 40,000 clicks, I think we worked out. So our largest client is about 2,500 users, and I don't think they've had to pay for any of the searches. But yeah, you would need to set up your own API.
Okay, cool. On the approvals, somebody said, can we approve credit notes? Which I know we can't, but you can approve returns. But I've also been asked the question, can we approve quotes?
Sorry, is that purchase credit notes?
No. Credit notes, full stop. So approving credit notes to customers, so sales credit notes.
Yeah,
I think we had that the other day, didn't we, with somebody? And then the other question was on the sales order approvals. Can you approve quotes, or does it have to be a sales order?
No, there is quotes. So you've got sales order quotes that you can approve, and then sales orders and sales order returns as well.
Okay, excellent.